Prince's Lovesexy88 tour as Wagnerian Union of All the Arts by Adam Reid Sexton. So come on down, Adam.
I'm going to be talking about the Lovesexy tour as a Wagnerian total artwork. The word for that is, and I'm going to slaughter this because I don't speak German, but it's something like Gesamtkunstwerk, okay? And I'm going to explain what that is in a minute. Okay, so coined by German philosopher K.F.E. Trondorf in 1827, the term Gesamtkunstwerk, meaning total artwork, was adopted most famously by the German composer and creator of operas, Richard Wagner. There he is. In his 1849 essay, The Artwork of the Future, Wagner wrote about the necessity of combining the arts of dance, tone, by which he meant music, and poetry. Okay, Wagner argued that only such a total artwork was capable of achieving what he called the fullest expression of community, something that each, quote, separate art branch could never reach alone, but only all together. The term came back into fashion in the 1980s when critics used it to characterize the work of creators like theater director Robert Wilson, who collaborated with composer Philip Glass. And here's a little taste of what those guys, how do I play this, D'Angelo? What those guys were up to. Thanks so much. In December of 1984, avant-garde theater and opera director Peter Sellers said, particularly in the light of the new technologies and the way they're transforming everything we now know as performance, the theater of the future is necessarily this Gesamtkunstwerk. Okay, the future came fast. It came in less than 4 years. And it came in the form of the tour that Prince mounted in support of his album Lovesexy. Presented in the round over 77 nights in sports arenas across Europe, the US, and Japan, the show required enough staging and scenery, lighting and sound equipment, costumes and props and instruments to fill 2 747 cargo jets or 14 trucks, according to critic Greil Marcus. Here's what Marcus observed when he attended Lovesexy88 on the tour's opening night in France. $1 million set, some say 2 million, that does everything but shoot baskets into the onstage hoop, record quality sound, the most sophisticated lighting in the history of mass entertainment, constant costume changes, skits, and dances in the course of a 3-hour show, a 9-piece ensemble with every step blocked out, every gesture scripted, not a drop of sweat left to chance. Another critic suggested a Broadway play as, quote, the closest approximation to the 2 hours of smoke, skits, props, and lights that make up the show. How many people here actually saw Lovesexy88? Okay. Never before had Prince created anything as immersive, and never again would he attempt to match its coherence and scope. A paragon of the pop music tour, Lovesexy88 should also be remembered as a Wagnerian total artwork. So first of all, although Wagner didn't, we're going to begin with the music. Wagner actually started with dance when discussing the total artwork, but we're going to start with music because that, I think, is where Prince always began. Prince, having been Prince, variations were a nightly possibility on the Lovesexy88 tour, but the wiki set list the wiki site setlist.fm has compiled a list of 32 songs performed most nights of the tour in 2 main sets and 2 encores, which is consistent with the information available on princevault.com and with my memory of the 4 Lovesexy 88 shows I attended. Thank you. Thank you very much. Critics have been remarking upon Prince's musical range since the release in 1978 of his first album, For You, and the glory of Prince's live shows was the stylistic breadth of the songs performed in it. Thus, Lovesexy 88, as we know, having seen the climax of the European tour last night here, Lovesexy 88 included funk and Philadelphia soul, hard rock and ballads and hard rock ballads. It featured the hyperactive swing of Delirious and Jack You Off, Sister and Let's Go Crazy, as well as a 12-bar blues, the unreleased Blues in C, If I Had a Harem, inserted unexpectedly into the new wave of When You Were Mine. The show made room for hip-hop in Alphabet Street, Bob George, and super funky Califragisexy. 2 songs lacked bass lines. And there was a song that at least one early reviewer classified upon its release as country, and country star Dwight Yoakam arranged and recorded as such. Anybody know? Purple Rain. Not to mention the hard-to-classify musical maximalism of Lovesexy songs like I Know, Glam Slam, and Lovesexy. According to John Perellis of the New York Times, there's so much melody on the Lovesexy album, quote, that Prince gets away with extraordinary liberties in his harmonies. Long stretches of the album qualify as polytonal, with the rhythm section in one key and horns, keyboards, and voices in another. All right. As a result of this surfeit of keys, melody, of material, quote, Prince rarely played the songs in their entirety, according to reviewer Rob Tannenbaum. Quote, instead, he showed them off the way Liberace used to display his sparkly outfits, holding them up for the audience's admiration, then changing again, the better to demonstrate the enviable quality of his possession. The Times' Perellis agreed. Quote, he does not wait for applause. His 2 sets hurtle from song to song with barely a break. What he wants instead is the kind of call and response a gospel preacher shares with his congregation. Has any composer or band leader ever offered, that has been capable of offering, such a wide variety of musical styles in a single show consisting almost exclusively of his own work? I mean, I don't think so. That range, in turn, enabled unexpected combinations and juxtapositions. Think of the manic medley of Delirious, Jack You Off, and Sister, and the sweet release provided by a segue from that medley to the opening riff of I Want to Be Your Lover. Think of Bob George's kick drum-driven chaos, interrupted by the clarity of Anastasia, its opening chords on piano as the Black Album dead ends in Lovesexy. Or the grandeur and glory of The Cross from Sign of the Times, impossible to follow, except counterintuitively with the zen-like calm of I Wish You Heaven. Without the embarrassment of riches that was Prince's song catalog by 1988, none of these effects would have been possible. By the same token, lacking the taste and chops to perform his music with soul and exactitude, whether in relaxed-seeming extended grooves or song fragments that the band turned on a dime to reject in favor of other song fragments, even the highest caliber songwriting would have been for naught. Thus, I would be remiss not to note the musicianship of the unnamed Lovesexy 88 band. Some call it the band with no name. Atlanta Bliss, Bonnie Boyer, Kat, Sheila E., Dr. Fink, Eric Leeds, Levi Caesar Jr., Miko Weaver, and Prince himself. To quote Play in the Sunshine, a song not performed on the Lovesexy tour, play, okay. My Lovesexy 88 tour book lists no choreographer, though surely much of the credit for the choreography belongs to Prince himself, as he had been performing many of the steps and gestures in the show, on stage, and in videos for many years. Think of the break dancing during the Little Red Corvette guitar solo. Now, we learned last night definitively that Kat collaborated with Prince very intensively on the dance in the show, but that's not actually noted in the tour book, sort of surprisingly. In any case, at least two aspects of the dancing on the 1988 tour astonished then and continue to do so today when one watches footage of the concert, as we did last night. The first is the sheer amount of choreography in the program. As critic Greil Marcus observed, quote, "Every step was blocked out, every gesture scripted, not a drop of sweat left to chance." Equally remarkable, though, is the seeming naturalness of much of the dancing in the show, as the performers often appear not to be enacting choreography at all, but rather moving spontaneously, organically, because they can't help doing so. And again, this jibes with what Kat told us about last night. Partly it's the way they stride, jog, even skip from one side of the Lovesexy stage to another, so that every member of the ensemble can briefly face every part of the audience. I love the generosity of that gesture before the next set of moves on the next downbeat. In any case, as I watched the members of the band with no name on stage in Dortmund, Germany last night performing Lovesexy 88 for the 30th time in precisely 2 months, and that's not counting rehearsals and sound checks, I can't help feeling that they're having fun, that they would dance even if they weren't expected, instructed, required to do so, even if it weren't part of their job. Okay, so Wagner's third art is poetry, as he called it, under which rubric he included, quote, "complete dramatic characters and complex situations, in short, the entire ingredients of drama," end of quote. Naturally enough, many of Lovesexy 88's 32 songs, okay, fully 1/4 of the program, came from the album after which the tour was named, with an additional 2 having originated on the Black Album. Notably, only a single Lovesexy number, Anastasia, appeared in the show's first set, as that set's climax and conclusion. And this is an unconventional strategy with respect to pop concerts. Typically, pop performers front-load new material, presumably with the hopes of receiving a positive response from a still fresh and expectant audience, before rewarding that audience for its patience with the hits, played later in the program for the most part. Prince, by contrast, performed the following during his first Lovesexy 88 set: Delirious, I Want to Be Your Lover, Little Red Corvette, You Got the Look, Controversy, and Dirty Mind. Also Sheila E.'s A Love Bizarre. Of course, it was a catalog deep with such hits that made this approach possible, as it still left Let's Go Crazy, When Doves Cry, Purple Rain, 1999, and Alphabet Street for the band to play during the show's 2 encores, and it left other hits unplayed altogether. Now here's the method to Prince's madness. Thank you. The first half of the Lovesexy 88 show prepared the audience for a post-intermission second set comprising 5 Lovesexy songs, plus The Cross and Kiss. This counterintuitive programming strategy both evinced Prince's faith that his fans would go where he led them, and it told a story. Okay, the story, as we know, concerns a character played by Prince, who, when we meet him, is focused on pursuits of the flesh. He's an inhabitant of a metaphorical erotic city, and he engages in mutual masturbation, oral sex, intercourse, and incest. Good night, everybody. As a result, although longing for love, he is cuckolded or abandoned altogether, and violent death ensues. A spiritual awakening follows, as does the concert's second set, the Lovesexy part. Now, because such a narrative is expressed in the lyrics of the first set's songs alone, right? In the lyrics, that story is in the words to the songs, so Prince and his band could have stood in place, performed those songs and thereby told that story. They didn't. Instead, they performed it, enabled by music and dance, as well as by props and scenery. A double bed, a basketball hoop, a playground swing, love the playground swing, and a 3/4 size 1967 Thunderbird that circled the multi-tier stage on a track. The drama, the poetry in Wagner's terms, is also enabled by acting in a series of skits, the climax of which takes place during the super funky Califragisexy Bob George medley, which is, I think, almost as disturbing as it is funny. And it is funny. As viewers of Under the Cherry Moon, also known as all of us, know, Prince was a natural physical comedian with a gift for slapstick and an irrepressible compulsion for mugging. Okay, though he did not stress costumes in his, quote, artwork of the future, they were by no means incidental to the operas of Wagner, who, incidentally, some scholars believe to have been a secret cross-dresser. After all, Wagner gave opera what is probably its most recognizable single image, a stout, spear-toting woman in a breastplate and helmet. That's an actual design for an actual opera costume to be featured in one of Wagner's productions of his own work. The costumes worn by Prince and his band on the Lovesexy '88 tour were unlike any I have seen before or since on Prince or anyone else. Sartorial themes that ran across the performance outfits of the musicians included prominent polka dots and, perhaps inspired by designer Patrick Kelly, oversized buttons. And the costumes featured, of course, super graphics on the legs and the arms of the performers, over the shoulder and down the torso, and in one case, between the legs. Quote, "We started writing on all his clothes, and the clothes all had graphics on them," tour wardrobe manager Helen Hyatt told the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. Mainly these graphics identified the musicians with a colossal DR across the tunic and a smaller Fink down the leg of Matt Fink's scrubs, for instance. There isn't a picture of it here, but I think we've seen the photo, maybe in the last presentation before lunch, of the word cat descending in orange along a black arm-length fingerless glove, which is a kind of visual pun on her last name, with endorphin down the leg of her matching spandex shorts. I know we've seen the image today of the complimentary overcoat, which read woman down the left arm. And yes, the silver Sheila rising up the leg of her one-legged leotard led to a silver E emblazoned on Ms. Escovedo's crotch. According to wardrobe manager Hyatt, here's how this motif came to be. On opening night in Paris, he came to me and said, "Can you write Minneapolis on the sleeve?" And I was like, "Sure, it's only an hour before showtime." Overall, a sea change had occurred in the look of Prince and his band, from frilly and, it must be said, a little bit fussy, to poppy and playful. The new look's apotheosis was Prince's black toreador pants, into which he tucked a white blouse with sound, as in Minneapolis, along one sleeve, set off by a white polka-dotted black cravat. The crowning touch was a matching ponytail tie, which made Prince look not like Wagner, but rather the infinitely more appealing Mozart. Yeah. One last time, here's Greil Marcus writing about When You Were Mine as performed by Prince on the first night of the tour. It was one of those moments when, confronted with the distant figure on the stage, with the huge noise that years of concert going cannot quite connect to the performer's body, you almost shudder at the reaction building inside you, asking, is this real? Is this happening? You shut your eyes, trying to commit 1,000 nuances to memory, but memory will barely hold a few. And you know that for all the rehearsals, all the effects, for every detail of the perfect script, the song can never be played precisely this way again. Like a fan who won't wash the hand that touched the star, you're afraid to go to sleep for fear of what you might forget. I had forgotten before writing this paper that of the venues at which I saw Prince perform on his Lovesexy '88 tour, And on later tours, 3 no longer exist as such. Philadelphia's Spectrum was demolished in 2011. The Roseland Ballroom, site of an unforgettable Lovesexy '88 after show, closed in 2014. And the Palladium, where Prince performed in 1994 following the release of The Most Beautiful Girl in the World, was demolished in 1997 by NYU. Thank you, NYU. And replaced by a dorm. The fact that Prince will never write or record again is an undeniably tragic loss. And yet, thanks to those grooves and grooves up on the shelf, new Prince music is most likely in our future, offering pleasure and consolation in the years to come. By contrast, a space that cannot be filled is the one left empty on stages worldwide, the stages that still exist, following Prince's death 2 years ago. Not being a performer himself, Wagner envisioned an onstage proxy who would enact the total artwork he aspired to create, writing that as dancer, tone artist, and poet, he still is one and the same thing, nothing other than artistic man. It is in him that the 3 sister arts unite their forces in one collective operation, in which the highest faculty of each comes to its highest unfolding. That artistic man was Prince. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Adam. And next we will have Mixed Reviews, Examining the Impact of Lovesexy by Tasha Digital.
Hello. Hi, everyone. D'Angela, you're going to tell me how to get to the next slide, right? Because it's not on the screen. Oh, just hit the button. Oh, go back, honey, go back. Thank you. D'Angela, thank you for organizing this symposium. She has done a phenomenal job. And thank you, Zahir Ali, for recommending me for this symposium. He and I appeared on Fuse TV last year for Prince's 1-year death anniversary. And this is our first time meeting in person, so long live social media. Okay, so my name is Tasha Digital. I'm a marketing strategist. I build websites. But I'm also known as Analog Lady in these online music communities. So I'm like somewhere in the middle between analog and digital. So let me just give you a little bit of context before I start my presentation. In 1988, when Lovesexy came out, I was only 5 years old, okay? So I didn't get to experience this album until my adult life, just to give you some context, right? So Prince released 9 studio albums in the 1980s, right? And this was around the time when music was widely distributed on CDs in lieu of vinyl records. So let me just go into this. Okay, so after much anticipation for the Black Album, which was supposed to be the follow-up to Sign of the Times that came out in '87, Prince decided not to release the Black Album, and Lovesexy followed up behind Sign of the Times. And his fans were like, what is this? You know, the Black Album was supposed to be like underground funk. And instead of that, we got this, him naked on an album cover, you know, covering his man parts. But because of that cover, the distribution in the US was limited. And this has been historically known as one of his least successful albums, you know, in the US. However, this album took off overseas, and that's where he launched the Lovesexy tour. So the themes presented in this album focus on the connection between like spirituality and sexuality. Prince always danced the fine line between those two concepts. And, you know, his naked body on the cover is an angelic representation of like a spiritual rebirth of sorts. So just go to the next slide. So this album was like Prince's version of gospel, if you want to call it that. You know, the themes presented in this album focus on, like I said, the connection between spirituality and sexuality. And with so much going on in the world, including the AIDS scare, like Prince brought us into his own world of sorts with the Lovesexy album. So, like I mentioned, by 1988, CD sales were surpassing vinyl record sales. And he took full advantage of that by giving us this one-track album. There were no breaks in between the 9 songs on there, which was another reason why this album wasn't that popular in the US. So this is some of the promo from the Lovesexy tour, which proved to be very successful. He mixed records from this album and other songs previously recorded. And while he was recording Sign of the Times, there were a bunch of unreleased projects that still haven't seen the light of day. So I'm really looking forward to those, especially there's one called Camille where he's actually like using a woman's singing voice. And that's it. Thank you very much.